It's a good thing we divorced. It turns out you're still having a hard time, hen. In the middle of a muddy rice field, the man hoed with rough hands and shabby clothes. Then his ex-wife came with a contemptuous laugh, holding her new husband's hand while showing off her luxury car. "See, your life is still poor, he said arrogantly. They didn't know that the man they were looking down on was actually. Before this story begins, we suggest you comment on where you are watching this story from, like and subscribe so that the channel on story can grow and can present the best stories. Let's start the story. In a quiet village, far from the glitz and gloom of the city and the noise of the streets, there lived a 30-year-old man named Hendra. He lives in a simple wooden house inherited from his parents. The yard is spacious, facing directly onto the expanse of rice fields that are green during the planting season and dry brown when the harvest comes. Even though he is alone, Hendra lives his life calmly and modestly. He has long been divorced from Dinda, the woman who once filled his days. Every morning, Hendra wakes up before the morning call to prayer, lights a small oil lamp on the terrace, then performs ablution and performs prayers in silence. After that, he brewed water for coffee and a simple breakfast, then took a hoe and walked along the rice fields which he now manages entirely himself. Not many people know that most of the rice fields he hoed were his own. He bought it little by little from the savings he had made over the years. Hendra is not a person who likes to show off. Even when other residents knew that the land certificates in his name continued to increase, he just smiled and said, "If it can be used for farming, why not?" His appearance never changed. A t-shirt, a conical hat, dirty pants covered in mud, and flip-flops that were starting to wear out. But from his clear eyes and calm gaze, it was clear that Hendra's heart was more open than anyone else in the village. His life had once been shaken greatly when Dinda chose to leave him. The reason given was simple but suffocating. "Our life is too hard, Hen. I need a certain future." At that time, Hendra did not have as many rice fields as he has now. He was just a small farmer who lived off the harvest and a small daily wage. Dinda felt tired of living hard and married a city man who said he promised a luxurious life. Since then, Hendra has never loved another woman. He chose to improve his life, expand his cultivated land, and rebuild his confidence that had previously been shattered. However, one thing he never threw away was his gratitude to God. One hot afternoon, Hendra was hoeing in one corner of his rice field. His shirt was wet with sweat. His hands were covered in dirt, but his smile never left. The wind blew gently, carrying the scent of young rice paddies starting to grow. In the distance, the sound of a car engine approached. Not long after, a white Pajero Sport stopped at the edge of the dirt road. Hendra glanced back for a moment, then returned to his hoeing without much thought. From inside the car, a married couple with sunglasses got out. The man wore a sleek white shirt and designer trousers. The woman, meanwhile, stood out in a tight dress and high heels that didn't match the muddy soil surrounding the rice paddy. Hendra's expression immediately changed when he saw the woman. His chest heaved, but his face remained calm. It was Dinda, his ex-wife. The woman who had once promised to be with him until old age, but left when their lives were in dire straits. That's not Hendra, is it?" Dinda asked in a loud voice to the man beside her. "Which one?" "The one with the hoe," answered the man whose name turned out to be Anton. Dinda chuckled while folding her arms. "Yes, it turns out he's still alive. Oh my God, he's getting even crazier. Luckily, I don't have to live with him for the rest of my life." Anton laughed along while shaking his head. "Just imagine if you were still with him. Every day I hang out, eat tempeh, live like an animal." Hendra heard all those words, but he didn't even look back. He continued to hoe. Although in his chest there was a strange feeling that could not be explained, not because of heartache, but because of surprise. Why are there people who so easily underestimate other people without knowing what's really going on behind that muddy back? Dinda then walked towards the rice fields while looking around. Bro, are you sure this land is good for building a house? I really want to have a house with a romantic rice field view like that. I've already contacted a land broker, said Anton. They say no one has bought this land yet. This is great if we can buy it all. The price will definitely be cheap. Hendra stopped hoeing and then looked at them for a moment. His eyes were sharp but calm. He didn't say anything. He just smiled a little, then returned to sticking the hoe into the ground. Behind Hendra's calm, there was something that Dinda and Anton didn't know. Something that could change everything. Something that will make them speechless. It was getting late afternoon. The sun was leaning to the west, creating long shadows between the rice fields. Dinda wiped the sweat on her forehead that was starting to appear due to the village son's tricks. He seemed uncomfortable standing too long on the edge of the rice field. The heels of her high shoes began to sink into the soft ground, making her face look annoyed. Tun, hurry up and contact the person. I can't stand staying in a place like this for long. Dinda complained while patting her sleeves, which were covered in street dust. Anton opened his cell phone and called someone. Not long after, a man in his 50s came, wearing a shabby batik shirt and carrying a plastic folder. His name is Mr. Juna, a land broker who is quite well known in the village. He greeted them with a friendly smile. Wow, this must be the city couple who called earlier, huh? I'm Juna, the land broker here, he said, shaking Anton's hand. Yes, it is true. I'm Anton, this is my wife. Dinda, we are interested in the land on the edge of this rice field. That one is right behind the man who is hoeing. Anton replied while pointing at Hendra. Mr. Juna glanced at Hendra and then smiled faintly. Huh. The same land that was hoed. Don't tell me it already has an owner, sir. Dinda said in a high tone. Mr. Juna looked at them seriously. The land did have an owner. And not only that, almost all the rice fields along this village road were owned by the same person. Anton frowned. Seriously, sir. Who is it? How could there be so many? Mr. Juna looked at them with a small smile, then said quietly. The owner's name is Hendra. Dinda gasped. Her eyes widened. What? Mr. Juna nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. The one who is hoeing. He is the legal owner of the land that you are eyeing now. Even the land you have passed this afternoon is mostly in his name. Anton laughed in disbelief. Seriously, sir. How could a hoe man own that much land? I'm not lying, sir. All the documents are here. He does live simply, but since 5 years ago he has been buying little by little from residents who are selling land. Now almost half of the productive land in this village belongs to him. Mr. Juna explained while taking out several photocopies of certificates from his folder. Dinda looked pale, her lips trembling, her chest tight. He was still staring at Hendra, who was now standing, patting his hoe to clear the soil. Hendra's gaze met his eyes for a moment. But the man only smiled faintly. A smile that was secretly painful. So what you mean, sir? We came to insult the person who actually owns all of this, Anton said in a low voice. Mr. Juna remained silent. He knew when to speak and when to let the facts speak for themselves. Anton took a deep breath and then grumbled softly. Why didn't you say so earlier, sir? I'm embarrassed. But Anton's embarrassment was nothing compared to Dinda, who now stood frozen in place. Her eyes were watery, her chest tight, her face full of regret. All the mocking words he had thrown earlier rang back in her own ears. this time like a whip that hit her pride. Hendra began to walk away from the rice field. He put the hoe on the edge of the mango tree and wiped his face with a small towel from his pants pocket. Without saying anything, he walked past Dinda and Anton, only nodding slowly to Mr. Juna. But as he passed them, Dinda suddenly called out softly, "Hen, wait a minute." Hendra stopped and turned slowly. "Are you really? Do you own all this land?" Dinda asked in barely a whisper. Hendra nodded. "Land never lies, Din. I may not talk much, but I never stop working." Dinda held her breath, her hands clenching. Her face paled even further when she saw Hendra turn around and continue walking towards the house without even looking back. Anton still stood with a confused face. Meanwhile, Mr. Juna tidied up his folders and said goodbye. "Sorry, sir/madam. If you're still interested in looking for other land, I can help. But for the area around here, it's best to ask Mr. Hendra directly." Dinda only nodded slowly. Her eyes still stared at Hendra's retreating back. Behind her narrowed eyes, feelings emerged that she had previously pushed away. Regret, longing, and a desire to return. However, she had no idea that the days ahead would be even more surprising. Night slowly fell on the village. The lights of the residents' houses dimmed, creating a calm and peaceful atmosphere. But not for Dinda. Since the meeting this afternoon, her thoughts had been in turmoil. She sat in the living room of their rented house with Anton, staring blankly at the ceiling. "What's wrong with you, Din?" Anton asked, taking off his jacket and throwing it carelessly on the chair. "You've been quiet all this time." Dinda turned her head quickly. "I never thought Hendra could be like that. All the land we passed earlier was his. Do you know what that means?" Anton listened as he opened his phone. Then why do you regret leaving him like that?" Dinda didn't answer right away. She just stared out the window and said quietly, "When I left him he had nothing. But now he has everything." Anton laughed mischievously. "Having that much rice field doesn't necessarily mean you're rich. Din, don't be easily impressed. You think he's the only one with surprises. But it's Anton who's holding the real surprise." A few minutes later there was a knock on the door. 3 strange men stood outside, neatly dressed, but with stern faces. One of them immediately handed him a letter. "Are you Anton?" the man asked coldly. "Yes, what's wrong with me?" Anton replied confusedly. "We're from the leasing and bank. The Pajero car in your name has been in arrears for 3 months. Today we came to do the confiscation." Dinda stared. "What?" Anton panicked. Wait. Can explain. I just transferred the money last month. We already gave you a warning. Here's the official letter. Please empty the vehicle immediately," the man said, walking toward the car. Dinda followed them, breathing heavily. You said the car was paid off. You said you were a wealthy businessman." Anton glared at him. "I never said it was paid off. I just said I was starting a business." The white Pajero Sport was taken away. Dinda stood stunned, watching the car they had been so proud of earlier that afternoon disappear into the darkness of the night. Her heart was pounding. All the luxury she had flaunted in front of Hendra this afternoon was just a mirage. "So what are we going to ride now?" Dinda asked, barely audible. Anton went into the house without answering. He threw his phone on the table and sat down, massaging his forehead. Several messages came into his phone from unknown numbers. The contents were all the same. Bills, warnings, threats. Dinda opened her own phone and began searching for Hendra's name in her old contact list. Her fingers trembled as she typed the messages. "Hen, I want to talk. Can I meet?" The message went unanswered. Dinda retype. I misjudged you. I want to have a heart-to-heart talk. Still no answer. She took a deep breath and leaned against the wall of the house. In her silence, Hendra's face reappeared in her mind. His calm smile, his mature gaze, a calmness she had never seen in Anton. All the memories she had previously ignored now crashed back into her like unstoppable waves. The next day, Dinda dared to come to Hendra's house. She brought a small bag containing some clothes. Anton didn't know. He stood for a long time in front of the old but clean and tidy wooden fence. From inside the house came the sound of spoons and glasses clashing. There was a woman's voice. A few moments later the door opened. A young girl came out carrying a tray. Her skin was clear, her hair tied simply, her face sweet and modest. She smiled when she saw Dinda in front of the fence. "Good morning. Can I help you?" the girl asked politely. Dinda was stunned. "Who are you?" "I'm Cicililin, Hendra's wife," she answered calmly without the slightest awkwardness. Dinda's heart felt like it stopped beating. Words Cecil's voice echoed loudly in her ears. "Hendra's future wife already has a replacement." "What?" "Hendra is at home," Dinda asked with a trembling voice. Cecil nodded and invited Dinda in. But before Dinda could go any further, Hendra had already appeared from behind the door. He stood straight, staring at his ex-wife with a straight face. "What's wrong, Din?" he asked immediately. Dinda lowered her head, her eyes starting to well up with tears. "I was wrong. I didn't know you could change this much. I didn't know Anton was a cheater. I was wrong to leave you. I still love you. Please give me one more chance." Cecil stood beside Hendra, remaining calm despite hearing those hurtful words. Hendra took a deep breath. "When you asked for a separation because I was poor, I accepted. Because I know that love that depends on wealth won't last long," Hendra said quietly but firmly. Dinda cries. "I realize now. But you're not too late." But Hendra shook his head slowly. "I've started a new life, and Cecil, she loves me not for what I have, but for who I really am." Those words made Dinda silent. He couldn't bear to look Cecil in the eye. Her heart was broken. All dreams of returning were shattered into pieces in just one conversation. But that's not the end of it all. Because soon the village would witness something greater than tears and regret. The long-awaited day has arrived. The village hall is decorated with yellow coconut leaves and fresh flowers. The long table is neatly arranged. Village food served temptingly on a large winnowing basket. The sound of traditional gamelan flows from simple loudspeakers. The villagers came in droves wearing their best clothes. That day, Hendra and Cecil will get married. In Hendra's yard, several men were busy helping arrange chairs. The mothers brought large pans and trays from the kitchen. Their faces were bright. Not a few of them were secretly amazed to see Cecil, a girl from a neighboring village who was known to be kind, polite, and hardworking. They felt happy because finally Hendra, a quiet man who often helped selflessly, found the right partner. Hendra himself looked dashing in a dark brown biscap. Her smile never left her face since morning, but far away at the end of the road stood an uninvited person. Dinda. He came wearing simple clothes. Her face looked tired, her eyes were swollen. He stood still, watching the crowd from a distance, watching Hendra busy greeting guests and preparing for his wedding. Some of the residents watched him, whispering softly. They recognized Dinda, the woman who was once Hendra's wife and left him for a city man. But no one chased him away. They left Dinda standing on the side of the road like a shadow from the past that no longer had a place. Dinda couldn't look away. He witnessed for himself how happy Hendra was and how warmly he welcomed the guests. Sissel walked out of the house wearing a clean white kabaya. Her face lit up and she held her mother's hand, who was smiling with emotion. When Hendra and Sissel were preparing to go to the wedding venue, Dinda tried to get closer. His steps were hesitant. However, he continued walking until he finally stood a few steps away from Hendra. Her voice was soft. Hendra turned his head. He was silent for a moment, then nodded slightly. "Thank you for coming." Dinda wanted to talk further, but Hendra just smiled. A smile that is not to reminisce about the past, but a smile that indicates that the past is over. "Congratulations," Dinda finally said, even though her heart ached. "Thank you," Hendra answered softly, then took Sissel's hand and led her to the wedding venue. Dinda stood there frozen, her eyes filled with tears. In the midst of the lively crowd, he felt like the only person without direction. He saw Hendra's hand gripping Sissel's hand tightly, saw their laughter and felt the wound deepen. Shortly after, the marriage ceremony began. The atmosphere turned silent. Hendra sat upright in front of the registrar and the village head. The witnesses and residents listened silently, watching Hendra say the ijab qabul with a firm voice. "I accept Sissel binti Marsudi's marriage with a dowry of a set of prayer equipment paid in cash." Takbir was heard softly from the guests. A smile spread across Sissel's face. Tears of emotion fell from her mother's cheeks. Hendra also looked at his wife, who was now legally married in a sacred bond. Dinda can't stand it anymore. He turned and walked slowly away from the crowd. Every step felt heavy. He held Isaac, who was almost breaking down. When Anton's car was taken away by dead collector, he didn't cry yet. When the rented house was sued, he did not cry. But today, seeing Hendra getting married and being truly happy, she cried. She knew there would be no more place for her in Hendra's heart. Not because Hendra was angry or resentful, but because Hendra was done with him. And because Sissel came with a sincerity that she could never offer before. From a distance, the sounds of village children's laughter, wedding songs, and the beating of tambourines could be heard merrily. Hendra and Sissel greeted the guests with big smiles. They do not party with luxury, but with real love and simplicity. One thing that Dinda once rejected is now the thing she regrets the most. Meanwhile, Anton sat in a small shop on the outskirts of town. He picked up the phone, but there was no credit left. He looked at the busy street and then grumbled to himself. All his plans failed. All his false promises were shattered. And the one thing he feared the most had now come true. Dinda no longer believes him. That day became the end point. The point where regret cannot be redeemed. The point where the old story closes forever. Night fell on the village quietly. The hanging lights from the village hall illuminate the courtyard, which is now filled with laughter, prayers, and village dishes. The children were running around. The parents sat down to enjoy their meal, and some of the young men helped clear the table. In the midst of the crowd, Hendra and Sissel sat side by side on a simple wedding dais wearing traditional brown and gold clothes. Their faces shone with unfeigned happiness. There was no fancy stage, no wedding car decorated with plastic flowers, but all the guests went home with warm hearts. Hendra and Sissel's wedding was the talk of the village for days. Not because of luxury but because of meaningful simplicity. Everyone knows that day is a day of victory for the man who was once looked down upon, abandoned, and even insulted because of his poverty. At the corner of the road leading to the village hall, Dinda was still standing. He couldn't go home. His clothes were starting to become dull from the dust of the night, and his eyes were puffy from holding back tears for too long. He saw the remains of the crowd from a distance, heard Dongdoot Koplo songs playing softly, and saw the silhouette of Sissel hugging a female guest who had arrived. There's no place for him anymore. Even just saying hello he felt inappropriate. He knew there was nothing he could change. The time he wasted, the love he wasted, everything had become someone else's. And the person was named Sissel. Some residents who passed by recognized him, but they didn't speak. They knew that Dinda had lost not because of circumstances, but because of her own choices. The choice to leave someone who is struggling and choose someone who is only full of sweet promises. Meanwhile, at the wedding dais, Hendra held Sissel's hand tightly. He looked into his wife's calm eyes and said softly, "Just for the two of them. Thank you. You believed in me, even when I had nothing." Sissel smiled softly. "What I seek is not wealth but heart. And you have had that since the first time I saw you helping the old woman push the cart." Hendra chuckled. He remembered the moment when Sissel saw him for the first time at the village market. At that time he only brought one sack of fertilizer and one simple determination: live well without hurting anyone. Under the wedding dais, several small children came carrying cakes and ice cream from the cooler. Hendra patted their heads, gave them pocket money and laughed with them. Sissel laughed along, shared the cake, and sat on the floor with the children. That was their new life. Share with each other, respect each other without having to regret the past. Because what they are experiencing today is the fruit of patience and sincerity. Some time later, Dinda finally walked away. His legs were shaking, but he continued walking down the quiet village road. He didn't know where he was going. Their rented house was already filled with warning letters. Anton can no longer be relied upon. His life was back to zero, even worse because this time he lost everything. At a bend in the road, he stopped for a moment, staring up at the dark sky dotted with stars. Then her tears fell again. Not because she was abandoned, but because she realized that she once had a good man who was willing to fight with her. However, he threw it away just because he was impatient. Meanwhile, inside Hendra's house, after all the guests had gone home, Sissel sat on the veranda, staring at the night sky. Hendra came carrying 2 cups of warm tea. They sat together in silence, enjoying the cool village evening breeze. "I never thought I'd get to this point," Hendra said quietly. "Because you are patient and never stop praying," Sissel replied. Hendra smiled and said thanks to Allah. He knew that everything that happened was not a coincidence. All the sadness, insults, hard work and betrayal have now paid off sweetly. He looked at the comb and said, "I promise to take care of you in my own way, not with luxury, but with sincerity." Sissel looked down, smiled and replied, "And I will always be by your side, even if one day the world turns upside down again." In that silent night, 2 hearts united in simplicity. And far away in the village, someone was crying in the dark, regretting an irreparable mistake. Because time can never be turned back and wrong choices cannot always be redeemed. This story teaches that in life, Never underestimate other people just because of their appearance or current circumstances. The person we look down on today could be preparing a big move that will change everything. Patience, hard work, and sincerity will always find a way. And true love is not born from luxury, but from the sincerity to accept things as they are. This story is fictional, made to resemble reality solely to gain wisdom and life lessons. If there are similarities in names, places, or events, it is purely coincidental and not intentional. Thank you for listening to this story until the end. If you like the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss other inspiring stories. See you in the next story.